おばんです. She counted the sections between them at every station, 7 at the start, then 6, then 5. Nobody had boarded, nobody had moved, and yet by the final stop he was sitting directly across from her. She had watched every station, had never seen him move. He had moved anyway. Don't count the seats between you and anyone else on a late-night train tonight. It is time for chapter 134. The last train is its own particular world, quieter than the day trains, fewer passengers, the particular intimacy of a near-empty carriage late at night. Most people who ride the last train do so without incident, simply a journey from one station to the next in the quiet company of strangers going home. But occasionally the last train carries something that is not simply a stranger going home, something that boards at the first station and uses the journey, the stops, the doors opening and closing, the moments when attention naturally drifts to close the distance, station by station, without ever being seen to move. A woman was taking the last train home on a weeknight. The carriage was nearly empty when she boarded, a handful of passengers scattered across the seats. She chose a seat toward the middle of the carriage and settled in for the journey. She noticed the man at the far end of the carriage without particular attention, simply registered his presence the way you register the presence of other passengers on a quiet train. Unremarkable, simply there. She looked at her phone. At the next station, the doors opened. Nobody boarded from that platform. Nobody left the carriage. She looked up. The man was closer. She told herself she had misidentified which seat he had been in. The carriage was long, the lighting at that end not ideal. She looked at him directly for a moment, fixed his position clearly in her mind, 2 sections further from her end than the door she had entered through. She went back to her phone. At the next station, the doors opened and closed. Nobody boarded. Nobody left. She looked up. He was 1 section closer. She was now certain of what she had seen at the previous station, and certain that what she was seeing now could not be attributed to misidentification. He had moved, without being seen to move, in the window between her looking away and looking back. If these stories have found their way to you, if you find yourself returning to this quiet room, there is something small you can do, like and subscribe. It tells me, and whatever else watches from this room, that you were here, and that you intend to find your way back. She began watching the doors carefully at each station, keeping the man in her peripheral vision while appearing to look at her phone. The doors would open, the platform visible beyond them. No one boarding, no one leaving. The doors would close. She would look up. He would be closer, every single time, moving by exactly 1 section per station with the mechanical consistency of something following a precise and predetermined schedule. She counted the remaining sections between them. 4, then 3, then 2. The other passengers in the carriage, 2 people near the doors at her end, appeared entirely unaware of what was happening, simply sitting, looking at their own phones, going home. I wonder, have you ever been on a late-night train and felt the particular awareness of someone closing the distance between you, not seeing them move, simply finding them closer each time you looked? Perhaps you told yourself you had miscounted the seats. Granny is always listening. At the penultimate station, she made a decision. She moved, stood up and walked to the doors at her end of the carriage, stood near the two other passengers, waited. The doors opened at her stop. She got off quickly, walked up the platform without looking back, through the barriers, out of the station. She did not look back until she was outside on the street. She told me she had not run, had simply moved with the controlled efficiency of someone who has decided that a situation requires leaving and is leaving it. She walked home at a pace that was not quite running, arrived, locked the door, sat in her kitchen for a while, then looked at her phone, at the journey she had just taken, at the stop where she had boarded, and counted the stations. You are still here? Good. Some stories need a witness all the way to the end. I wonder, how carefully do you watch the other passengers on late-night trains? There had been 7 stations between her boarding point and her stop. He had been 7 sections away when she first noticed him, 1 section per station. He would have reached her at exactly her stop, had she stayed in her seat. She told me this with the particular steadiness of someone who has worked through the mathematics of what they experienced and arrived at a conclusion they would prefer not to have arrived at. The timing was not coincidental, was not the result of a passenger simply moving through the carriage in ordinary ways. Whatever had been on that train had known exactly how many stations it had, and had allocated itself accordingly, 1 section per station, arriving at her seat at precisely the last stop, had she stayed. I think about the last train, about the particular quality of near-empty carriages late at night. Most journeys on the last train are simply journeys, but I think about what it would mean to board a train with a specific destination in mind, not a station, a person, and to use the journey, the reliable rhythm of stations, the predictable moments when attention drifts to phones and windows, to close the distance with the precision of something that has done this before, that knows how many stations it has, that allocates itself accordingly, and that would have arrived at exactly the right moment had she stayed in her seat until the last stop. I have always found the mathematics of such things more unsettling than the things themselves, the planning it implies. Another whispered story from Japan, shared quietly here beside the kotatsu. If you take the last train home and you notice a passenger at the far end of the carriage, count the sections between you. Then count them again at the next station after the doors have opened and closed and nobody has visibly moved. And if the number is smaller, get off at the next stop, regardless of whether it is your stop, because whatever is on that train with you has already done the mathematics, knows how many stations remain, has allocated itself one section per station with the precise and patient planning of something that has done this journey before, and it will arrive at your seat at exactly the right moment, if you are still in it. When the doors open for the last time. If this story stayed with you, if the dark or the shadow feels a little closer tonight, you know where to find me. I am always here beside the kotatsu, watching, waiting. And if you wish others to find their way here too, there is something small you can do. Like and subscribe. I would not object.